the point is that we could get rid of the jitter by using another register. Now, from what we found out about the card, we could not find, I mean, the register that was there was worked on by firmware and was consulted by firmware. And so we have not found another register that would, it's actually two registers, two 32-bit registers, one 64-bit register. We have not found a way to do this, but I would definitely love to know how. So please, please, please.
Yes, the second part of that is that you're updating that register, but looking at the jitter on the order of 2 microseconds per beacon, that is right around the range of what frequency it's running at. So I would say that if you can stick to the same register, but make that code run in real time, because it appears that there might be 10 clocks being used as a subroutine sometimes, not all the time, after that register is being built into the RF.
Now, I fear that we would need to deal with firmware at this level, and we do not have that. I mean, we do not have that capability. We would love to. Now, what we tried to do was merely with the driver, and we think of this as a cheap way. I mean, if you can think that Ubiquiti is cheap, well, I can afford it, right? But like I said, I'd love to talk about this. Any more questions? Yes, please.
What about the beacon rate that you changed? Did you use that as when you matched the clock speed, but now the beacon rate is different? Is that something you can continue to fingerprint with?
So it doesn't really matter for the clock skew how many beacons you receive. It's just the accuracy of how you can spoof. So
If I'm the client trying to determine which one I want to associate with, can I use the beacon rate as part of my fingerprint?
well, yes. So we actually never saw a beacon interval different from the default. But certainly, if you find that somebody is beaconing at a rate that's not exactly what you expect from your regular infrastructure AP, that in itself is a dead giveaway. There is a bit of an issue with that, though, because the beacon queue is the lower priority queue, and so sometimes beacons are skipped. So if you look at like inter-beacon intervals, that's not a very good fingerprinting technique, we found out. But if you really see an AP beaconing at something other than an accepted and normal infrastructure beaconing rate, yeah.
I was actually thinking your technique, you were to decrease the jitter. You changed.
Well, we'd be giving, yes. So we'd probably be able to fake that better if we changed our beaconing interval. On the other hand, we'd be giving ourselves away by the very fact that we don't send 10 beacons per second, but rather a different number on average.
So when you looked at the vendors' products that you looked at, nobody's doing any kind of dynamic beacon interval change? It's all manual?
We have not, what we've seen so far, and we haven't seen much, has been, it's not one of those settings that people think much about. And it's almost always in what we've seen we have an Aruba infrastructure. We used to have a Cisco infrastructure. We still have a Cisco infrastructure in an affiliated medical school. And it seemed to us that no one is actually doing anything much with the beacon interval.
So the variable's exposed to the operator, but nobody's really paying attention.
Yeah, not that we noticed, not that we know of. The original paper proposed this as a WIDS primitive to look out for, and our concentration has been different. Our concentration has been, well, if you're really paranoid, what can you do without your driver being changed to something completely different and being absolutely bulletproof with respect to the data it accepts. So what we were thinking was a driver firewall, really. So we don't let the driver code paths see the data before we have a certain things about the AP. Yes, such as what the times are, because it's hard to screw up parsing that out, that one thing out. And also, we had another effort in which we injected malformed frames going out at the AP. The idea was that there are 8 flags in there in the frame control header, and you can vary them any way you like. They're supposed to be 0, pretty much all of them, on association request, authentication request, on probe request. And the AP may or may not respond to you if you send it a probe request that appears to originate from the wired side. Right? What is that? How did that frame arrive at the interface? Oh, it kind of crawled through the wires. And there is, you've got the toDS bit and the fromDS bit, and they are for your data frames to indicate whether, you're sending it to the distribution system or receiving it from the distribution system. And yet, a lot of APs would respond to any old garbage and say, oh, here it is. Here's your probe response. Here's your authentication response. So by the pattern of the malformed frames that you respond to, you can tell the architecture of the AP as well. How are we doing on time?
We're over.
We're over, as usual. Well, thank you very much.